Hey Kudou, where the heck is Yokai Watch Part 2? It's coming, but in the meantime, let's get sidetracked with some more Weiss Sports. So one of my fans reached out to me and started playing Weiss with me online. What's that? You didn't know I played Weiss online? Well, you know now. If you're interested, you could play online at tradecardsonline.com. And if you ever want to play against yours truly, then you can just message me on Facebook, or you can send me a message on Skype. My Skype is Kudou-kun. This would also be a great time to remind everybody that my Facebook group that's normally Patreon only right now is just accepting everybody. So if you're interested in coming, talking to me about Weiss, or maybe even voting on your favorite content, then just go to the description box. It should be the very first link you see. Join, hang out, talk to me, talk to other fans about old card games you'll like, and like I said before, you can vote on the kind of content you want to see. So maybe if you want to see some match videos or some more deck doctors, then it might be a good place to go. That's about enough shilling for this video. The basic idea is today we're going to do a deck doctor video of an Asuna and Sinon deck. And it has to be Asuna and Sinon exclusively. It's one of the rules. It's kind of like a waifu deck, except there are 2 waifus instead of 1 because polygamy is okay. The second rule of the deck is he wants it centered around change mechanics. As such, we have to run at least 1 change of each character. That's about it though. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at his build, and then we're going to compare it to my build, and at the end of it, I'll give you guys the deck list, some pointers, and whatever else. Please enjoy! So starting off here is his level 0. Ignore the fact that it says 24 cards. It actually throws the climaxes here because the climaxes are considered level 0s. Anyways, his numbers here aren't bad. It's 16 level 0s. 16 is about where you would want a Sao deck because level 0 for Sao is just amazing in most cases. So 16 is really good. There are some things that we should change up though. Only running 2 of the childhood Asuna is a shame because it's the 4000 beater. Definitely want more of those. Sinon basic knowledge of guns is okay, but we're gonna play with that a little bit. And also, Asuna place to return to is a level 0 vanilla, and that's just ooh, it hurts. Ooh, it hurts to use a level 0 vanilla in a Sao deck because Sao has such good. Oh god, it hurt. Never mind. All right, we're gonna take that card out. That's all I'm trying to say. So here's something a little closer to what I would do with it. I cut it down to 15 cards because there's an event that I want to fit into the deck, but 15 is still a good number. So a change-heavy deck lives and dies by its consistency. So we have to have some kind of level 0 searcher. It hurts a lot that this is only Sinon and Asuna because if we had Kirito, then we would have access to a pretty awesome level 0 searcher, but we're just going to make do with what we have. Sinon Ideal Self will work for us. You play it, you pay 1 stock, you put the top card of your deck into your clock for damage, and you can search your deck for a level 2 or higher character, reveal it to your opponent, and put it in your hand. We're going to be focusing almost purely around level 2 changers that change into level 3s. 1, because it kind of fits with the meta, and 2, because there are 2 kind of decent level 3s that we can use for this deck that have change targets. Childhood Asuna is going to be our main beater at level 0, 4000 level 0, something you would expect from Sao. Its effect isn't necessarily too detrimental. At the beginning of each of your encore steps, you have to discard the top card of your deck, and if it's a level 0, then this card kills itself pretty much. It's a little hurtful because about half of our deck is going to be 0, but at the same time, it's not really that big of a deal because you don't plan on staying on level 0 for too long. A lot of people are going to look at this and say, but Silica Date Night. But hey, we're going to play by the rules. No reds, no greens. We're just going to play with yellows and blues, and if they don't have Asuna or Sinon in them, then they don't count. We're going to go ahead and use the level 0 assist in Sinon Mission in the Twilight. It's pretty much exactly Newlywed Asuna, except we need more blue than we need yellow, so we're going to use this one instead of Newlywed. 500 to the characters in front of it, 1000 to a character if you play a climax. It's not the greatest support out there, especially since it only counts for characters in front of this character, but it's still pretty decent. And to round us off, we're going to use Sinon in the Sunlight Forest, which is our Brainstorm. During your opponent's turn, your front row center slot character gets plus 1000 power. Decent, but mainly we're going to use it for the Brainstorm because it's only pay 1 stock. You don't have to rest or anything to do it. Top 4 cards of your deck, and for each Climax, you can search your deck for an avatar or net character, put it in your hand, and then discard that many cards. As far as climaxes go, this is a pretty good one. You can use the pay one stock over and over again, so if you happen to get like a climax in your stock really early or something, then you can just pay through it to get the stock into your discard piles to make sure that when you deck refresh you don't have all of those climaxes stored up. And the fact that we can search our deck for avatar and net characters is really good because we can search for our changers and put the changed targets, if we happen to have them in our hand, into our discard pile so they'll be ready for the change. We're going to take a look at a couple of alternative cards too. The first one is Asuna, Feelings That Want to Be Told. This is a really interesting card if you're an offensive player like I am. You can pretty much pay any amount of stock to have her gain that much soul for the turn. This is a cool idea if you want to punish an opponent who's showing a lot of climaxes early. If your opponent has been stalking climaxes, if your opponent's been playing a lot of climaxes. It's also really neat because it gives you an option for a 2-soul attacker on level 1 and level 0. Again, you have to be really careful with it because you don't want to be paying all of your stock early in the game unless you know that you're going to get something off of it. But in the situations where it is good, it's really good. The other optional card is Kazuto and Asuna in uniform. Yes, it has Kirito in it, but it still counts. It is still an Asuna card. Do not question me on this. When another of your characters attacks, this gets plus 1000 for the turn. The reason that this is good and it's really splashable is because if you attack with this card last, it goes up to 4500, which makes it beat out other people's 4000s. This is especially good if you're fighting another Sao deck because Sao decks have access to a lot of 4000 level 0s, so this card is a really good answer to them. Getting onto his level 1, again, the numbers here are really nice, but one of the problems I see is there's just so much competition for the back row. He's already got some kind of level 0 support that he's probably going to have, and he's got 2 different level 1 characters that need to go into the back to work. Having one beater is okay in a deck like this, but when you have so much going on in the back row, it's really kind of pointless. In a setup like this, the Shino, Another Self, is what you really want in your back row because it changes into the level 2. The problem I see with that is that if you do that, Asuna's domestic side is a really useless card. And both of these kind of trivialize how useful the Sinon Twilight mission is, so So I've cleaned it up a bit. I've switched out the main Encore beater that he was using. The Asuna that he was using is a really good Asuna because when you Encore, you just take one card from the top of your deck and put it in clock, so it doesn't waste hand advantage. But the one problem with that is in a change deck like this, we actually want to be wasting hand advantage because if we happen to draw into our level 3s and we need a way to ditch them into the discard pile, then we can just use some kind of card with Super Encore to put them directly there. Sinon's power is also easier to keep up, but we'll get onto that later. For our second card, we've got our choice between 3 different cards here, but the card I'm going to be focusing on is that first one, Asuna, Invitation to the Party, because Sinon is already such a good beater on her own, and we need more cards that search, so Invitation to Party is pretty much the best we've got here. So taking a look at Sinon Challenge to the Strong, she can keep up her plus 1000 bonus as long as you have 3 or more other net characters, and that's pretty simple because we're going to be running pretty decent back row, so that's 2 already, and if you're attacking with 1 other character, then that's 7000. And then of course the Super Encore is always good. If your opponent happens to step over her, just put one of your change targets in the discard pile. Ain't no big deal. So the Asuna we're going to be focusing on is Invites to Party. This is a really great consistency card, a lot of people know this. When you attack, if you have Star Splash in play, then you can pay 1 stock, search your deck for a net character, and put it in your hands. It does go up to 5500 if you have 3 or more other net characters in play, but that's really irrelevant. We're mainly just using it for consistency, and obviously if you decide not to use this card, then you would take Star Splash out of your deck. So one of our optional cards, if you don't feel like using Invites to Party, is Asuna Enters the Underground Dungeon. I really like this card, especially because of how offensive it is. This can accelerate itself up to 8500, which is really good for taking out cards that don't have Encore. We also shouldn't be too afraid to push ourselves to level 2 because we want to be on level 2 for our changing. Our other option is Asuna Takes Shelter. This card is really good if you happen to be playing behind. Like, this is a really good oh no button if your opponent is still on level 0 and pushed you to level 1 a little too quickly. This Asuna can get freaking huge. If your opponent is still playing on level 0 and you can just keep eating level 0s with Asuna Take Shelter, then this card can get so big that it can actually become like a game-winning card. The cool thing is because its effect is optional and you don't have to keep doing it if you don't want to. So if you've already eaten like 3 or 4 cards, then you don't have to keep eating more cards from your deck if you're a little paranoid that you might be hitting climaxes. So let's mosey on down to level 2, and level 2 is when it starts to become kind of a frickin' mess. So that one Berserk Healer Asuna is a one of a climax combo. It needs a climax to work, but it's a one of, which you should just never ever do. Also, Machine of Ice Sinon and Sinon Strong Being are both more back row characters. It's 6 more back row characters on top of all the level 1 back row, on top of all the level 0 back row. It's too much. You've only got 2 spaces, my dude. 2 spaces, and it's not very common that your opponent is going to be continuously killing your back row. Finally, Asuna's Quiet Time is... It's set up for your level 3, but it's honestly not very good setup, and it's not even the changer that turns into your level 3, it's just setting up for your level 3. This is the level that desperately needs some help. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to have 4 copies of each of our changers, and then our third card can either be another beater or another card for consistency. So let's start by looking at Sinon. First of all of your other Avatar net characters get plus 1000 power all the time. Whew, that is a spicy meme. It's our changer, but if we can't change, or if we just don't want to change, then having these in the back row for 1 stock is pretty good, okay? It's pretty good, guys. This is the only level 2 assist you need. You don't need to be putting Machine of Ice in here at all. So its change is a little costly, but you pay 2 stock and you discard a card, and you can put in play Last Shot from your discard pile, and that's pretty much the main use of this card. Our other changer is Asuna Yuki. When she comes into play, you can give one of your other characters plus 500 power. Not that good, honestly, not great, but it also has a change with the same change requirements, so if you happen to have Beacon of Hope in your discard pile, then you can go into this. So we're going to keep using Tranquility, otherwise known as Asuna's Quiet Time, I guess, on trade cards online. And honestly, it's not a great card, but it does have synergy, so we're going to go ahead and keep it in here anyways. It uses the same climax as our level 3, which is awesome. And when you play its climax, which is on top of the world tree, you can search your deck for your level 3 Asuna and also 1 other character and put them in your hand at the cost of only 1 card from your hand. So it's pretty good. An alternative to that is Asuna's Coy Smile. It makes me really nervous when I'm using a deck that doesn't have a level 2 that can swing for 2 soul. It just doesn't feel offensive enough. I know I always come back to how offensive a card feels, but it's true. Your deck should almost always have a card that can swing for 2 soul at level 2 so that you can get your opponent to deck refresh as soon as possible. So if you have at least 3 other Avatar net characters, this card gets Super Encore, which is nice. The downside to this card, of course, is that all of your other characters can't side attack. This might hurt you every once in a while, but realistically speaking, you're probably not going to be side attacking a whole lot with this deck. So I don't see it as that big of a deal. Honestly, you would run this if you wanted your deck to be a little more aggressive rather than consistent, and if you're running all of the other consistency cards, you might not necessarily need the Tranquility. Here's his level 3. It's literally perfect. It's exactly what I would run for this kind of deck. The reason that it looks so split up like that is because he's using 1 each of the special signed cards, which is okay, alright, I get it. The swag is nice. So just to show you, yes, it is indeed the same, but we are still going to look at these cards and see what they do. So our first level 3 is Last Shot, and I actually really like this card. I like this card a lot. I think it's way better than the other level 3. When you put it in play, you heal 1 from the clock, always nice. And it has a climax combo where you can pay 2 stock and discard a card from your hand. When you play Phantom Bullet, you deal 4 damage to your opponent, and if it doesn't go through, then this card gets plus 3,500 until the end of your opponent's next turn. So if your opponent does happen to cancel the damage, then this goes up to a pretty beefy 13,500, and if your opponent doesn't cancel the damage, then that's over half of a level of damage you've done, and you can feel like a legend for a second. The only downside to this card, and the thing that makes it so hard to play, is its last ability. If this card becomes reversed, it goes to your memory. There is no chance of ever saving this card. So if it's reversed even once, then you lose it forever. The last character we're going to look at is Asuna, Beacon of Hope. This card is good too. I'm not necessarily saying that this card is awful and I would only run the other Sinon, but I just think the other Sinon's raw 4 damage is a bit better than this card. This card does have a couple of really neat things about it though. When you put it in play through change or just from playing it from your hand, then during that turn, if this card's damage is cancelled, then you can deal 1-shot damage to your opponent afterwards. And its climax combo gives all of your characters plus 5,000 power, and if they reverse a character, that character goes to the stock, so kick it back, kick it away. This is really good, obviously, if your opponent's using Encore, and the plus 5,000 power definitely helps. I kept some room in the deck open for an event card. I'd almost argue that Sacrifice is too good not to run in a competitive SAO deck, and it's got Asuna's picture on the cover, so that means it counts. Level 1, pay 1, give a character plus 3,500. That is huge on level 1, okay? Massive. And the other cool thing is it has synergy with our Sinon Last Shot. Since our Last Shot goes to the memory if she's reversed, you can use this to keep her alive a little longer. And you can also kind of trick your opponent into attacking your Asuna Take Shelter or your Asuna Invitation to Party or something, because your Asunas at level 1 are going to be so weak, your opponent's going to immediately want to step over them with something, and you can just kind of counter with this, and then, surprise, Asuna's not dead, but their character is. These are the climaxes. Again, if you're not going to be using Invitation to Party, then take out Star Splash and just put on another On Top of World Tree and Phantom Bullet. I won't even bother showing them, you guys should just be able to look them up on your own. So for anybody who might be looking at this deck and doesn't really want to follow, adhere to the strict rules that I put on the beginning of the video, but still wants to run the deck idea, I recommend taking out the Beacon of Hope stuff for Asuna Imprisoned Queen. A quick reminder to everybody, Asuna Imprisoned Queen is a total Bay. If you have one Kirito in play, then she goes up to 7,000 power, and she gets Super Encore. So the way it works is you run this Kirito as your back row. If you have 2 of them in the back, then during your turn, all of your Imprisoned Queens are 8,000 with Super Encore, and during your opponent's turn, they're all 9,000 with Super Encore. That is a big bootied Asuna for your opponent to have to deal with. The setup I recommend using is probably running an Imprisoned Queen setup for your level 0 and level 1, and then transitioning into a Last Shot Sinon build for your level 2. The cool thing about this is the card that turns into Last Shot Sinon is really good for this card, because if you happen to get those in the back, then your Imprisoned Queens are just 9,000 all the time, which is decent. See, and the cool thing is, if you really wanted to stick to that change idea, then there's even a level 0 that changes into Imprisoned Queen. So, hypothetically, during the second or third turn of the game, you could just start your Imprisoned Queen strategy and start going off. This would also give you access to one of the best search engines in all of Sword Art Online. When it comes into play, you pay 1 stock, you discard 1 card, and you can search your deck for any avatar character and put it in your hand. Now, that is what we call consistency. Again, this is all if you wanted to break the rules and include Kirito in your little love triangle. If you're keeping it all Asuna, then you can just work without him. So here's a look at the full completed deck list along with the optional cards, and also the 4 cards that you would want to run if you're going to run an Imprisoned Asuna build. Again, I would personally look up all of the optional cards that I have listed and see which one suits your playstyle the best. You also don't have to run 4s and 3s of everything, so if you feel like running 2 of one card and 2 of another card, that could also be an option. As always, if you enjoy this deck profile and you're going to use it, then all I ask is that you leave me a like on your way out, and that's it. But for right now, we're going to move on to some strategy. So when you're redrawing your hand at the beginning of the game, keep absolutely nothing except for your zeros. Throw away every single leveled card, only keep zeros, and if you already have 2 zeros, then maybe keep your climaxes as well. As we stated before, SAO has very powerful level 0, so you want to be playing into it as quickly as possible, and you don't need anything for combo pieces necessarily at the beginning. So the cool thing about Sword Art Online is we can be both aggressive and also kind of setup-y at our level 0. Be aggressive with your 4000s. Remember that not every deck has access to 4000s at level 0, so really make use of them. We don't have any Suiciders because Suiciders are red, but if your opponent does happen to play Suiciders, don't even worry about it. You have enough offensiveness to take care of them. If you are running Sinon, Twilight Mission, or whatever it's called, then get those in the back row immediately. I'd say don't even worry about playing your Brainstorm Sinon unless you start clocking climaxes. Then use it as an out to get rid of those, or you can put them in your back row while you're waiting for Twilight Mission, or if you're not running Twilight Mission, then just keep a couple of those in the back, because what'll happen is your front row center slot will get plus 2000, which is helpful at level 1 as well. If you happen to be drawing a lot of your climaxes, or if you climax cancel 2 or 3 times near the beginning of the match, then you might also want to use your Brainstorm to sort of deck refresh faster, because you definitely don't want to have like 4 climaxes shown to your opponent and then continue playing the game while your opponent hasn't shown any. That's bad. Just sift through your deck, get decent hand advantage, and it doesn't matter if it costs stock if it keeps you in the game. At level 1, you want Sinon. You absolutely want that Sinon because she is beefy. Ideally, you'd like to get 2 of her in play. Not only do they feed each other, as in if you have 2 back row and you have those 2 in the front row, you always have Super Encore on both of them. But if you are running Asuna Invitation to Party, then you only really need to do it 1 at a time, so just having that 1 extra space is good for it. Really, I'd say that for any of the Asunas. If you have 1 open space for whatever tech Asuna you're using, then that should be enough. Mainly, though, you want to have 2 of your Sinons in play. Once we hit level 2, this should be easy mode. Whichever change target you have in your discard pile, plan around it. If you have the Sinon, then try to keep 1 of her Climax in your hand so that you can immediately go into a Climax combo and do your thing. If not, then run the Asuna. If you haven't set up either of them, you're at a huge disadvantage. You might want to work on that a bit later, but for right now, what you want to do is try to set up your either Tranquility or Koi Smile, whichever one you decided to run, and get a couple of the plus 1000 Sinons in the back. Having that plus 2000 power makes the Tranquility card a bit better because it stands at 10,000. And of course, Koi Smile steps at 11,000 and also stands at 2 souls, so you can start attacking for 2 soul if you really want. Ideally, though, it's all about setting up those changes. If you weren't able to set up the changes, then, like I said before, you're at a disadvantage and you might want to work on that. If you have both of them available and you only have the chance to really go for 1, then I'd say if your opponent doesn't have a full field, go for Sinon. If your opponent does have a full field, go for Asuna. So level 3 is the Desperacy level. Your opponent is probably not going to have a full row of attackers at this level. If they do, that's pretty rare, but you can continue going into Asuna Beacon of Hope. If your opponent doesn't, however, which is most likely the case unless they're running like a Titan build or something, you'll want to be focusing very heavily on Sinon Last Shot. Getting that 4 damage is really nice, and if you can get multiple of the Sinon in play, then you can get multiple of the 4 damage in play, which is great. The 4 damages are delicious, and eventually one of them is going to get through, and that 1 is going to pretty much be the game winner, because that's 4 damage on level 3. That's over half of your opponent's last level. If they've been clocking it all, then that's going to put them closer to death. You pretty much only have to pull it off once, and then get off 1 really good attack, and you win the game. Whew, guys, that is about all I had to say on the deck. It was a really fun profile to work on. I really hope my friendo sees this and we get to play more games. I hope you guys see this video and play with me on TradeCardsOnline.com. Swear I'm not sponsored by them, but I do think it's a cool place to hang out. Don't forget to check the description to check out the normally Patreon-only group that you can now join without being a Patreon supporter. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like. Those things really do help us out. If you have any thoughts on the deck, if you have a deck you want me to doctor, or if you just want to suggest something for me to do next, then leave it in the comment section below. And finally, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. I just got a new graphics card that I'm dying to test out, so I might be streaming a bit more. If you happen to be somebody that's awesome enough to stay to the end of the video, stay tuned for that. And as always, enjoy your card games, nerds.